Planet Dolan.
From ordering a baby brother from a catalog to losing your life along with your job, the Planet Dolan crew reenacts some of the best true stories from Reddit about the biggest misconceptions we had as children. I'm Cookie, and today I'll be your narrator. This story was submitted by Beauty in Burning Stars. As a child, Gooby and her sister Snoopy thought that being fired from a job meant that the fired person would get killed. Every time their mother told them not to bother her or she could get fired, as she primarily worked from home, Gooby and Snoopy assumed that her boss would come into her office and literally shoot her. Because of the misconception, they were terrified for their mother every day, especially when she had to go into the office. This story was submitted by Golden_15. Gergak didn't understand the idea of AI technology in video games. Whenever he turned on his Game Boy, he thought that it somehow connected to Nintendo's headquarters, where it was someone's job to play games with him. Gergak also thought that whoever was playing a game with him would be silently judging his choices of which games he bought. He imagined a whole room of those employees, each responsible for a different Game Boy somewhere in the world. This story was submitted by Tay Lin. Not knowing about alcohol at a young age, Melissa thought that drinking and driving meant having any beverage in a vehicle. So, when she was in kindergarten, she reported her mum for drinking and driving in the middle of a school assembly. Afterwards, her mum was called in for a meeting. In the end, everyone thought it was hilarious, and nobody corrected Melissa on what it really meant. It wasn't until 7th grade when she finally learned the truth. This story was submitted by Poipinoipi23. When he was very little, Derek thought anyone could order the people modeling the clothes in department store catalogs. He assumed that was where babies came from, and he used to spend several hours looking at all the baby boy models. Derek just wanted to pick out the perfect baby brother for his mum to order. His mum thought it was funny, but Derek never got a baby brother. This story was submitted by Carrot Ankles. Tolop was 5 years old when she had many misconceptions about pregnancy. She came from a large family of large women. While her mother had decades to lose baby weight, Tolop's aunts were single, childless, and heavier. While she understood that pregnancy and weight were related, she missed the memo that men were also involved in pregnancy. She thought that all women have several fully developed fetuses inside of them and could decide to go into labor whenever they wanted. The fatter the woman was, the more children she was capable of having. Tolop also thought that the only way to lose weight as a woman was to deliver all the babies. That meant, to Tolop, that her skinniest aunt had the most children. It also meant that, since her mother was still heavy, she still had more babies to give birth to. One day, when she was older, Tolop's stomach started to ache. Thinking her stomach ache was harming the babies, she cried. That was when her dad sat her down and set her straight about pregnancy. This story was submitted by The Big N Lowski. Dolan used to have the misconception that men got women pregnant by peeing in them. One time, he was talking to one of his friends when their conversation unexpectedly turned to sex. Because Dolan wanted to sound as though he knew what he was talking about, he told his friend that in order to get a woman pregnant, men had to pee in them. His friend looked at him dumbfounded and told him that wasn't how it worked. Dolan didn't learn the truth until he was 12. This story was submitted by Product of the 80s. The first time Wolfgang ever flew on an airplane was when he was a child. While getting their tickets, he watched as his family's luggage traveled on the conveyor belt and disappeared behind some black curtains. Whenever they arrived at their destination, Wolfgang watched as their luggage traveled along the conveyor belt in the baggage claim area. Being young and naive, he thought that luggage just traveled along really long conveyor belts that were underground between cities. It took him a while to realize that luggage actually goes on the airplane along with other checked bags. This story was submitted by SelfishGene15. Around the 4th grade, a kid in Hellbent's class called him gay. It was the first time he ever heard the word. After the school day, Hellbent asked his dad what it meant. Unfortunately, his dad didn't want to get into it at the time. So, he told him the other definition of gay, which is happy. The next day at school, Hellbent loudly proclaimed on the playground that he was gay. Not only did everyone laugh at him, but Hellbent dealt with a lot of cruel insults up until middle school. This story was submitted by Big Azza. Ever since he was little, Soup always believed that limes were just unripe lemons. He believed it up until he was in his early 20s when he went to buy a lemon tree. Soup was very confused when he saw lime trees at the store as well. It was at that moment that he felt like a complete idiot, and he continues to feel that way whenever he thinks about it. This story was submitted by Glennis2. James Shock was such a small child that he couldn't see over the side of his car door. That meant he couldn't see the road his mum or his dad were driving on. Because of that, he thought that bridges didn't have concrete roads. Instead, James Shock believed that cars and trucks would just drive on a lot of beams with giant gaps in them. He thought that if a car broke down, people would just have to walk along the beams and pray they wouldn't slip. This is Cookie, signing off. Goodbye!